Tonight, I particularly want to thank Asudi and Barnes & Noble for providing this space that we could all meet and tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit of some information that you may find useful for the Writers Guild of Acadiana. I'm Jack Caldwell. I was born and raised in Thibodaux, Louisiana. So I'm a Louisiana native, and I lived practically my entire life in Louisiana except for a little 10-year period I call the Exile, thanks to Hurricane Katrina. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. My genre is historical romance, particularly Jane Austen historical romance. Yeah, I write Jane Austen. I'm one of the few guys in the country who do this. But I pull using Jane Austen to help talk about historical fiction. And I'll talk about a little more about that later. To date, I have 9 published novels and have 2 more coming out next year. I have absolutely no writing background whatsoever. I got out of college as a business major, and I spent my entire career either as a stockbroker or working in economic development. So what in the world am I doing writing historical romance? Well, I just always had stories in my head, and I just learned how to put them on paper where people enjoy. The way I did that is I simply read the best. I read the best of what other people write, and then try to write that way. Try to write clear, try to write concise, try to tell a story for somebody else, not to impress myself with the type of words I put on the paper. I discovered this whole thing got started back in about the year 2000. The internet was relatively new, and for some reason, to this day, I don't know why, I started looking around the internet to see if anybody had ever written a sequel to Pride and Prejudice. Why? Because it's one of the best books I've ever read. And it's one of the few books that when you read it, you go, you know, they could have continued that story. I personally think Jane Austen is one of the greatest writers in English history. The reason I thought that is because I had seen that terrible sequel to Gone with the Wind called Scarlet. I said, someone's got to have done a better job with that than with Pride and Prejudice. And that's where I discovered this weird stuff out there called Jane Austen fan fiction. I didn't know this stuff existed. And to be honest with you, I got hooked. And so for the next few years, I was actually reading the stuff that was on the boards. Now, since I was working during the day, of course, I did all this stuff at night. So I would discuss this with my wife in the morning because she'd like to go to sleep before I did. And I had this real irritating habit of tearing apart plots. I like plots that make sense, that has a definite arc, and you don't leave any plot bunnies hanging. And when an author is out there writing something weird, not following any type of arc, just kind of, I call it vomiting out words, or their characters are not acting like human beings, I got a problem with that. And so I would discuss some of the good, bad, and the ugly that I saw on the boards the night before with my wife over breakfast. This went on for about 4 years. And in 2004, my wife finally had enough. She leaned over the breakfast table and says, "Okay, big mouth, can you do better?" In other words, she challenged me to write. That was my first work. This is The Three Colonels. It's a joint sequel to Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, taking place during the 100-day crisis of 1850. Basically, I send Jane Austen's soldiers to Waterloo. And the point of the story was to talk about the Battle of Waterloo and how the similarities of English society at the time was very similar to American society today during the War on Terror. That unless you actually had somebody in the military at the time, and you were worried about what was going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, the war really didn't mean a whole lot to you. You just went on your merry little way, forgetting that we had people dying on the other side of the world. And this is exactly what was going on during a lot of the Napoleonic Wars. If your father, son, brother wasn't in the Army or the Navy, who really cared? So that was the purpose of that book. And so now, that book was published online. It was free. I was giving it away. And I did this for several years. While I was writing fan fiction, I met a wonderful lady by the name of Abigail Reynolds. Anybody who reads this Jane Austen-esque fiction knows who Abigail is. She's one of the best writers in the group. She's the person we all want to grow up and be, and she is a personal friend of mine. Abigail was doing the same thing I was doing, writing wonderful stories on the boards just for people's entertainment. And then she got the idea of, I was going to start publishing this stuff. And her first few efforts were self-published. Back then it was called Vanity Publishing.
It was called what?
Vanity Publishing. Then a publishing outfit out of Naperville, Illinois, Sourcebook Landmark, approached her, and she signed a contract, and so she was publishing her stuff through Sourcebooks. So around 2009, I had about 4 books online. Abigail really talked to me. Says, Jack, your stuff is way too good to give away. Let me give you the name of my publisher and send them a manuscript. See what they say. Well, I did. I sent them this. I wish I could tell you I have a wall of rejection letters. I don't. My first manuscript was accepted, and I had a 3-book contract. This is Reverend Ranch. It's a reimagining of Pride and Prejudice set in post-Civil War Texas. And again, the point of that story was to basically talk about what Reconstruction was like in West Texas. Reconstruction in Georgia has been done. I think it's called Gone with the Wind, which is historical fiction, by the way. Historical fiction means what's in the book actually happened. This is not made-up stuff. They have fictional characters that were in real events. And that's what I write. Fictional characters in real events. So that's how I got started in 2010 with writing. I did that 2 books that were accepted by Sourcebook Landmark, and then they didn't pick up my 3rd book. Was something wrong with that 3rd book? No, because by then Abigail, who they made a lot of money on, got cut loose too. For some reason, Sourcebooks decided to bail out of the Jane Austen genre, just as it's getting ready to take off. Just because you're a publisher doesn't mean you're smart. So that's how I got into self-publishing, and I can talk about that later. But Abigail was a big help to me, and so we can talk about that a little bit later. So I'm online. My website is called Ramblings of a Cajun in Exile. And the reason for that is because, remember the thing I told you about Katrina? I was here. My house survived Hurricane Katrina. I was living in Covington at the time, but my job did not. And I was doing economic development at the time. And make a long story short, I ended up in all places, Wisconsin, to do economic development. So my wife and I packed up the car and drove 1,500 miles to set up shop in a small town called West Bend, Wisconsin, just northwest of Milwaukee. So I was a Cajun in Exile, and that's what my website was named, because that's about the time I started doing this stuff for real. And the name kind of stuck, even though now I'm back in Louisiana and living in Prairieville. But I picked up a nickname there. I'm called the Cajun Cheesehead, for logical reasons. The Cajun Cheesehead. I am the Cajun Cheesehead. Okay. And because my 2 favorite teams are the Saints and the Packers. So that is my website. That's my URL. CajunCheesehead.com is me. And my blog posts are the Cajun Cheesehead Chronicles. I've written basically, of my 9 books, about 6 of them are a part of 2 series. The first series I can talk about real quickly is what I call my Jane Austen Fighting Men series. It's to talk about a very interesting period of time, which is when Jane Austen lived, which is the Napoleonic Wars, the 100-Day Crisis, the War of 1812, and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. All this was going on during the Regency. The most important thing was the Industrial Revolution. And it's interesting to read Austen and other people, and they didn't know the world was changing underneath their feet at the time. But when they invented the steam engine, Katie barred the door. And England really changed a great deal. And so that series reflects that, talks about the effects of the 100-Day Crisis, how that was a turning point in history. Otherwise, Napoleon would still own Europe. But it's also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which would make England basically the most powerful country for 100 years and change our world forever. And that's what we're going to be talking about in a book I'll be putting out next year, which is a sequel to this series called Rosings Park. Another series that I put out is one based on Louisiana history. And this is all involved with my move up to Wisconsin. As I told you, I'm a Hurricane Katrina victim, and so I had the opportunity to live for several years up in the great upper Midwest. Wonderful, hard-working people. Many of them spent multiple trips down to the Gulf Coast to help us rebuild, both in New Orleans, Louisiana, and in Mississippi. However, they knew next to nothing of why we lived down here. And if I heard one more person say, "Why are you going to rebuild that city? It's underwater," I was going to scream. Especially when most of these people were farmers, and they were putting their grains on barges to ship it to where? The largest bulk port in the world, right outside of here.
New Orleans.
Well, it's the New Orleans to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
That's by economic development. So I could have written a letter to the editor, especially when you had politicians saying that. Instead, I wrote a 300,000 word, 1,100-page argument of why New Orleans matters. Crescent City. Now you're going, why in the world did you write so much? It wasn't that much that happened during Katrina. This book is not written for us. We're here. We know why we live here. We know why we came back. We know why we still live here. This is written for the other 48 states. Now, I wrote this much is because you don't know what you've lost until you fall in love with it. So, the first 2 books follow my characters through about 6-year, 8-year arc in their lives, talking about modern New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. The city is actually a character in the book. And the point of that is for the reader to invest themselves with the characters and therefore with the city. So that when I blow it up, they care. And what I'm proud about this book is I don't just talk about the hurricane, I talk about why the hurricane happened, why it flooded, who's really responsible, and I hit dead on all the lies and misrepresentations that are put out by the press and the politicians. So that was my revenge. That inspired me to continue to write about Louisiana history. And so I decided to put out Crescent City for the 10th anniversary of the storm in 2015. Also realized that that's the 10th anniversary of the storm. It's also the 2nd anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans. Another thing that people get wrong. They think that it's, oh yeah, it's that battle that happened when the war was already over, really didn't mean anything. And besides that, Jean Lafitte won that battle, right? No.
His name wasn't Jean, it was Jean.
Well, I'm talking about the way they say it. So what I simply did was I decided to take the characters from that book, go and make their ancestors there at the battle, and it's the beginning of a series. I'm going to write about a 200-year arc of history of Louisiana based following a couple of families. And I start off with the Plains of Chalmette. And what makes this story interesting is you see the battle not through a New Orleans native, but from somebody from outside the city. The main character is a soldier under the command of Jackson, who's from Maryland. And he is thrust inside this really weird city where everybody speaks French. Only 1/3 of the population is white. 1/3 is free black. You have people having black mistresses. Everybody lives in neighborhoods depending on where your background is. The Cajuns aren't light, so they're shoved out into the country up the river. This is weird. And these people are really not too sure if they really want to fight the British. And they really don't trust the Americans because they think anybody who speaks English is an Englishman and they hate him. And this is how, under the leadership of Jackson, he was able to pull all these people together and do basically the greatest feat, in my opinion, in American history. Because if the United States had lost the Battle of New Orleans, there wouldn't be a United States. England would have had New Orleans and would have controlled North America, just like they control the Mediterranean because they own Gibraltar. That's how important the Battle of New Orleans is. And so I plan on writing future books in that series about the Civil War, about the battle against yellow fever at the turn of the century, and also about the Louisiana men who parachuted into occupied France during World War II to work with the resistance. So those are some of the series I've been working on. I've also had some other books that I write just because that's what my muse talks about. And that's what you got to do. You basically follow your muse and you write what's in your head, because that's where the books are going to be interesting. I have a website, and I'm also in Twitter, I'm in Facebook, I'm in Goodreads. I hate Goodreads, but you got to be there. You have to use the social media as a way of promoting yourself, and that's how I'll start talking a little bit about self-publishing and how we figured out a way to make self-publishing work with other people. I got into self-publishing, so I had to. My publisher did not pick up my third book. Not that I was making a whole lot of money with a publisher anyway. And to be honest with you, traditional publishing, in my opinion, is dying. It really is, and it's the publisher's fault. It's gotten so expensive. Even though you see all these books over here that's published by various different houses, things have gotten so expensive, they're chasing after the can't miss, the stuff that's always going to work. They're chasing after the latest fad that's going out there. And instead of where it was when I started reading, way back in the Stone Age, talented writers who could potentially catch on and build an audience. But today, traditional publishing is a lack of support to anybody but the proven winners. And unfortunately, a lot of the big-name proven winners don't even write their own stuff anymore. They're a factory. They have a team of ghost writers. They come up with a plot. They write 90% of the book. The author then edits it, puts it in their voice, puts it out. Because that's the only way you can put out a bestseller every year. You can't physically write a book that fast. You can name the big guys who write their own books probably on one hand. Stephen King is probably the best example of a person who still writes every word that's in their book. But there's a lot of big authors out there putting out a lot of stuff that they're not writing their stuff, and they haven't written it for years. But they get support. Either that or some politician comes out and put a tell-all that's usually a bunch of lies, and so they get $1 million advance, which is then paid off by their unions or their political supporters who buy all the books, so can't lose there. So, and the other thing about traditional publishing is you don't make a whole lot per book because all the costs involved. When you have a book, somebody's got to edit it, someone's got to check the spelling, someone's got to lay it out, someone's got to do that cover, back cover, and then you got to print a whole bunch of them to fill up a bookstore. That comes out of your pocket. It doesn't come out of theirs. So that's the reason you don't make a whole lot of money in traditional publishing. So why isn't everybody self-publishing? There's a lot of advantages to self-publishing. One, you're going to make more money. I was making about 75 cents a book with this one. I'm making about $5 a book with this one. And I make just about the same amount of money, percentage money, on my ebooks. I make virtually nothing on ebooks on this one. I make about the same percentage of the ebooks on this one. And in my Audible books, I get 45%. So you're going to make more money per book. We'll get to that in a second. You also have control. Again, I have 2 books with source books. They won't make an Audible audio book. I don't know why. I've written to them, I've talked to them, they won't even answer my letters. And they won't release the rights for the audio book. But they won't make an audio book. I want an audio book, I go to Audible, and I get it done. Bingo. So I have control. If I want to have a sale for my books, go online, takes me 10 minutes, I can reduce the price. Can't do that in my published books. They decide when they want to sell. When you self-publish, you do. You can do anything you want with it. But there are some disadvantages to self-publishing. One, you're not getting any money up front. You're putting out the money. You're the one who's going to be having to find somebody, if you can't do it yourself, to do the layout, to do the editing, to coming up with that cover, and all that stuff. It costs me approximately $1,000 per book. I have editors who edit my work. That costs money. They print these, they design these covers and come back already pre-laid out, where I just drop it into Amazon, drop it into Nook, drop it into Kindle, and it works. I don't have to do that. And it's worth me paying the money to do that. Do I have to do that? No. I could learn to do the layout myself, but it's not going to look as good. It's not going to look as professional. I certainly can't do the covers. And I need professional editors, because you need your work edited. You need somebody to put eyes on it. I don't care how often you look at your work, you're going to miss your mistakes. You're going to. So it's worth it to me to pay to have mine edited. When you self-publish, you're not going to have your book here. Barnes & Noble doesn't own most of these books. In effect, this whole thing's one big consignment store. Book doesn't sell, they send it right back to the publisher. It's called returns. Publishers love to hold back your royalties for returns. So to get it in here, you would have to talk to your local store, and either they can try to work out a consignment deal, or they'll buy a few copies from you, and when they sold, they sell. And when they don't, they don't. But the nice thing about Barnes & Noble is that you can buy my books through Barnes & Noble online. You just have to tell the person at the desk, if you don't want to do it yourself on the computer, to go online and get me a copy. Unfortunately, not everybody in the store knows that they can do that. Sorry, get your training better. But the biggest problem with self-publishing is self-promotion. So, traditional publishers are supposed to promote what you do. Now, who they promote, they're going to promote the guys who give them the biggest return. Danielle Steele gets a lot more promotion dollars than you ever will. So, how much promotion is really going on with traditional publishing as compared to self-publishing? But if you're self-publishing, how are you going to do that? Well, part of it you talked about tonight. You talked about getting out there and using social media. Everybody's trying to figure this out, believe me. Everybody out there is trying to figure this out, including Stephen King. Stephen King tried to self-publish, and he's not doing it because he made so many damn mistakes with self-publishing, he's backed off and says, I don't want to deal with it anymore. But he tried, and he screwed up. He's a great writer, didn't have a clue what he was doing with self-publishing. So, you really have to work hard all the time on figuring out ways of promoting your work so people will know it's out there and people don't want to buy it. And again, social media is one of the best ways of doing that. There's other ways going out there. What I'm doing today. You think I'm doing this for my health? No. Hopefully a few of you might actually want to buy my book. You do want to buy my book, right? So this is what you do. You go out there and you're promoting yourself. You're promoting your work. You got to be proud of your work. You got to talk about it with everything. They have charity events. I'll give away a basket of books. Because, yeah, somebody's going to have some free books, but somebody else is going to go, darn, I wish I got that. You can buy it at Amazon? That's good. I'm going to be at the Louisiana Book Festival. I'll go to as many book festivals as I can. Because I'm selling books, promoting the books, trying to get out there, trying to do what I'm trying to do. And a lot of people, when they go onto the internet, through their website or whatever, what they call blog. Now, this is the meat of the reason I'm talking to you tonight. Blogging's great because you get people who are interested in your work, interested in the way that you turn a phrase, interested in what you're doing, and people are fascinated with writers. I don't know why, but they are. They think we do something they can't do. Maybe that's true. I don't personally believe that, but they think that. They really want to know how we're doing this. So that's why blogging's cool. And it's easy to set up a blog. There's so many different ways of setting up blogs. WordPress has become probably the biggest one out there, but there's several other programs out there. They don't cost a whole lot. That you can set up a blog that looks relatively nice, and then what do? You start blogging. What do you blog? You run out of ideas real quick. Because for a blog to work, you're going to have to put out something maybe 3 times a week. 3 times a week, you've got to come up with something original. You're having a hard time trying to finish that chapter, and oh my God, I got to put a blog post up today. That's the downside of blogs. There's been so many blogs out there that start out like a house on fire. Fantastic stuff they're putting out there. It's funny, it's interesting, it's insightful. After a couple of months, it's now once a week. Then it's once every other week. Then you're lucky if it's once a month. And if you're not putting out stuff there all the time, interest in that blog is just going to break. So how do you solve this problem? Remember Abigail? She came up with an idea. It's called a joint blog. The concept of a joint blog is 3 things that pull a joint blog together to make it work. Shared identity, shared costs, shared workload. That's all it is.
Workload?
Workload. And it ain't easy, but that's the benefit of the joint blog. Abigail was one of the leaders in putting together this thing. And she we played around with a couple of joint blogs that worked and didn't work, and just trying to find the right way of putting it all together. And finally, in 2013, Abigail, with two other writers, friends of mine, Maria Grace and Susan Mason Milks, founded Jane Austen Variations. So I have my PowerPoint, you'll be able to see it, but it's right there. It's austenvariations.com. Please take a look at it. It's simple, it's easy, it's not hard. You don't have to have a whole lot of bells and whistles and everything. But we'll have 4 to 5 postings a week on there. Why? Because we have 19 members. We are required to post at a minimum once a month. Once a month. That's your minimum. You can post more often, but once a month. So, let me explain, let's talk a little bit about Jane Austen Variations and how it fits into the criteria I talked about a joint blog. Shared identity. We have 19 really good authors. They're all in the Jane Austen genre. I'm the only guy, by the way. Makes me unique. But that's the shared identity. That's how it works. People who read this blog are the ones who are interested in this Jane Austen genre. We all do our own thing. Some of them do straight what we call variations on Jane Austen, which means they'll take a point of one of her plots, generally Pride and Prejudice, change something, a character makes a different decision than they did in the original book, and then it becomes a different story. Others like to move it in time and space. Let's take that plot, take their characters, but instead of having it in 1811 Regency England, let's make it 1871 West Texas, or 1852 India during the Raj and the situation over there in India. Make it during World War II. Make it New York City in the world of ballet. This is what people do with Jane Austen. And then you also have the third type, which is basically a sequel. What happened after Happy Ever After? What happened to all the minor characters in the story? So you write a sequel to it. We all do it. We all do different books in different ways, but it's all tied into Jane Austen. So we have a shared identity, and the people who read what's on the blog are interested in this stuff, interested in our process on how we write, interested in our characters, interested in previews of our next book. And we've begun a brand new thing. We're allowing our fans to submit questions to us. So in other words, they're interviewing us. So we're answering the direct questions that they want to hear. Shared costs. It costs money. And the nasty little secret of the internet is the more successful you are, the more expensive it is. It's called bandwidth. The more people that hit your website, the more it's going to cost you. The more room it's going to, and as that blog gets bigger and bigger, you're not rotating any of the old blog posts. They're still there. So it's got to be stored somewhere. That's called a server. And we don't bleach our server. Sorry, political joke. So your server costs go up. You have to be prepared that you're putting up your money and paying for that. Now we have that cost spread over 19 people. That doesn't mean we're paying every month. We usually pay once a year, and it's usually on a trailing situation. So that means someone's fronting up the cost. Someone is, I'm not going to tell you who she is, that's her business, but we're thankful for it. And then once a year we get a bill and we pay it. Now, it's a lot less money when you're sharing the costs. Because if you have a really knockout, fantastic blog, all of a sudden you're finding all your profits in your book are being paid for because eaten up by the bandwidth of your blog. So, again, this is a great thing. Third, shared workload. Remember I told you about the blog post. You've got to have stuff on your blog all the time to keep up interest. You can't post a blog a couple of times a month. You're wasting your time. You don't have to do it every day, but you're going to want to do it 2-3 times a week. With the setup that we have, we're able to spread this out. Where instead of doing all that, you're doing 1 or 2 blog posts a month. Sometimes people like to get like previews of their stories, so they'll do 4 or 5 a month, but that's already what they're already writing. They just simply take it and throw it in the blog. See, this is what's coming up. What about my book, right? Try to sell a book. So that's the neat thing about having a joint blog. We've also taken that to the next level. I'm self-published, but if you look at the bottom of my book, you can do it. It says I'm published through White Suit Press. White Suit Press does not exist. White Suit Press is us, the people that are in this joint blog. We use that to give ourselves an illusion of professionalism. So we're all, and it helps ties us together as an identity because we do far more than just do the joint blog. Now, you go onto the title page, yeah, published through White Suit Press in care of me. Abigail's is White Suit Press in care of Abigail. But it helps with an identity. Because the other thing that we do is more than just do the joint blog, we do cross-pollination, cross-promotion. We look at our work like country music. I know what you're saying. What the hell is he talking about? Rock and roll is great. But you'll find a rock fan who loves the Rolling Stones. Go, yeah, the Beatles weren't that great. But boy, Rolling Stones. Beatles fan goes, oh man, John, Paul, Ringo, George, who cares about the Rolling Stones? Country music, they love everything. And that's the way we approach it. I sell my books and then I sell Abigail's. Susan sells her books and sells Maria's. We sell each other's stuff. We promote it, we push it. When we have visits to book fairs, we try to do it with more than one of us. We have a banner. We have gone out there with joint money to have joint bookmarks, flyers, advertising. And joint books. We've actually worked together on a couple of book projects where we have multiple authors. I participated in one of these projects. And we're not making a dime on it. We're taking the proceeds from these ebooks and we're donating that to the Jane Austen House Museum in England. Not only because we want to do this, it's publicity, which means people might buy our books. And we do it together. When we read our first check, you go to our website, one of the photos on there is the photos of 3 of our members, including Abigail, handing over the first check to the Jane Austen Museum. So this is the beauty of having a joint blog. Multiple bloggers, members with various talents, cross-promotion, larger identity on the web, and joint projects. They are the, sounds great, doesn't it? Why doesn't everybody have one? Because it's a lot of work. And there's a couple of pitfalls to joint blogging that you need to know. And you got to suck it up and get ready for it if you plan on doing it. And it can be summed up in one word: ego. The pitfalls of a joint blog are conflicts between members. And those conflicts can be a lot of things. One of them is membership. In our group, we have 19 good authors. In every genre in the world: science fiction, fantasy, manga, teen fantasy, whatever. There's some good stuff out there, and the rest is direct. We don't have any direct authors, and we've hurt some people's feelings because we won't let them in the blog. They're not good enough. Or they've written one book. Great book. Where's your second book? I don't have one. You gonna write one? I don't know. Sorry, can't play. We set up the rules for our blog. They are invested in this genre. And you're going to continue to write in this genre. That means you're going to be out there writing, promoting, and living this genre. If you decide, and we've had a couple of authors who says, you know, I'm going to put that genre aside and I'm going to go play in another genre, they're either out or we put them on an inactive list. And they understand that going in. But it has to be that way for what we've envisioned our joint blog to do. But then on the other side, for the membership, you have people rotating off, you're going to have people come in. And believe me, we get requests all the time from Jane Austen authors who want to be part of our group. And we got to turn most of them down. Because they're not good enough, or they're not serious enough about this particular project. Conflict. So that's to get blogs really interesting, you need to have a constant theme going on. And sometimes you have arguments about that. So, well, we're going to write about this month. We're going to write about next month. Are we going to have a book sale? How often? Those sorts of things. These are things that have to be worked out. Making sure that workload is spread. Some jobs that you have with a blog are going to be more time consuming than others. Somebody's got to put that blog together. Somebody's got to maintain it in case someone screws up. We use WordPress, which is an easy system for people to post their blog posts on, but you can still screw it up. So that means someone has to be standing by almost all the time, ready to jump in and fix it. And because you don't always have everybody taking equal jobs, you run into the danger of burnout. Especially if it's the person who's managing the blog. So those are things you have to watch out for. That's a pitfall. So there are issues involved with that. Cost. How much you're willing to spend. How fancy a blog do you want to have? The more fancy it is, the more it's going to cost. Who's going to design it? I'm sorry, there's some authors that you can get into there, and they'll argue for days over a font. Like editing, technical work, and scheduling. 19 people. Some of us are very good about going, okay, here's my date, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And others should go, oh yeah, I guess I better sign up. Well, we need you to sign up. When are you going to do your blog? That sort of thing. So it's not all wonderful. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work when you're dealing with other people. But it can work if everyone's dedicated to it and they're very serious about it. So, can the Writers Guild of Acadiana have a joint blog? Sure. Sure you can. But you have to make it successful, you have to take some of the criteria I've talked about tonight. Hammer it out, be willing to shed some tears, willing to do that most terrible thing in the world, compromise, to get over the picayune items and get over to the ultimate goal. Promoting your work so that you can sell more books. Because everything you do has to be focused on the ultimate goal. Sell more books. So that's my presentation for tonight. I'm going to leave it open to questions. You can ask anything you want. May not answer it, that's all. So.
I have a lot of questions.
I know you do.
I just don't know where to start. It's like a passed over my head. But the one thing I want to start with, please put those 3 books together again and show us the bind.
This is
That was
why
awesome.
I pay
Why?
somebody to do
Because
this.
you're gonna want all 3 just to put the design
Ellen
together.
Pickles out
Show
of,
that, you saw that over here?
she's in Maryland,
Look,
and we talked about
turn
it.
it toward the camera, I want him to see. Each book,
Oh, okay.
Look at it.
You see the
isn't that
photo?
neat?
So this is what's neat about working with Ellen. Ellen and I work together on these covers. I get a basic idea. She's the one who came up with this one. This thing's fantastic. And we do these things. We look at the photos. We try to find images that are out there in the public domain, but sometimes you don't. I had to buy this one. But
So-
that happens. But, yeah, so she knew this was really, really important. She had a lot of fun putting this
Yeah.
together. And let me tell you, this is hard. That's got to be perfect every time. And when I'm sorry, Amazon isn't always that careful. So you really, really have to have your tolerances super tight so that Amazon can't screw it up.
So Amazon actually, so you put it together,
Yeah, absolutely. So we do the whole thing.
makes you wanna buy the whole series. You know,
That's
just
the
to have
idea.
the design,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a good book.
It is, I'm serious.
So it's,
Join blogging.
mhm.
Sounds really kind of complicated, so you gotta make sure that you do have people who are interested,
Right.
committed. That's in anything if you want it to be
Right.
successful. So, each of those 19 people,
Mhm.
let me see what I missed.
Yeah,
Somewhere between 19 people with the same genre, with the same passion.
right.
Okay, the finished product.
Mhm.
Everybody has put something in there to be printed?
Well, it's not necessarily printed. Again, a blog is.
I know, I'm
is something-
just,
yeah,
I'm just making,
exactly.
seeing
Right.
if
Mhm.
each person just kind of shoots their opinions out there, then the author of one of the 19 authors go, wait, maybe I could use this idea? Is that's what
No,
you're
no,
doing?
no, not really. What
What is
most
the
people
reason
like to
for
see,
it?
what most people like to put into a blog is whatever kind of turns on your muse gets on. I have a weird sense of humor, so usually the stuff I write is funny. Other people will write, or they'll include sections of the work they're working on,
Okay,
so that the reader goes, wow, that's interesting. I can't wait till they write the book so I can buy it. Other people will talk about the writing process,
okay,
what they go through, how I sit down, how I get my ideas. Other people, especially when you deal with history, they'll write a short blog about some little interesting fact they picked up in their historical research. And since most of us are doing Austen, and most of us are doing Regency stuff, they're finding out a whole bunch of stuff about how life was in the Regency and the rights of women and what the rights they didn't have and all these sorts of things, the everyday life that was going on during that time period. And again, because the readers like that time period, there's a reason for it. They want to learn more about it. So they'll write a blog about that. So again, all the blogs need to talk about something that's going on with that, something with your work, something about your work.
each individual,
Example, everyone, right, and they're doing their own thing.
different genres.
It can be different genres as long as it fits the overall
Right.
purpose of the blog, which is to promote Jane Austen
That's what I
variations,
wanted.
and you're in that group because you're in this genre.
So how do you communicate with 19 different authors? Do you do it
We
by
try-
Skype or?
No, we've tried a lot of different things, and the best way we found out to do it is through Facebook. But
Facebook Live or?
Facebook private. What you do is you set up a private page in Facebook. And the only people who are members of that page are the people in the group. Nobody else can read those posts. So you write to each other. You post it on Facebook. Everybody's got it on their phones. Everyone's got it on their computers, so it's instant communication. We've tried all kinds of it. We've done email blasts. We've tried Skype. We've tried Yahoo groups and all these sorts of things. None of it really worked as well as a private Facebook page. Because we all can post, we can all talk to each other. Everything we've written is there, it's live, it's forever. So you can go back and see what the heck you talked to. We have a live calendar in there so that you can go on there and you post on, this is the date I'm posting, I have this date. Oh, I got to switch. Let's switch them. And everybody has full ability to do this. Everybody can go in there and play with it. But if you leave the group, you're out. And you're blocked from that private group. So we have basically, actually we have three Facebook pages. We have the public page, which y'all have. Y'all have a public page. We have our private page. We also have a page for those of us in the group that are also members of White Suit Press. Not everyone that's in Jane Austen Variations uses White Suit Press. We have a couple of people in there who are traditionally published. Some publish through their own name or their own publishing name or whatever. They're self-published and do it a different way, or they have traditional publishing. That's okay, that's no matter. But we have the White Suit label out there for those who wish to utilize it. But it has to be members of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. I really enjoyed your talk. I have 3 questions. I have 20 questions on. I'll keep it to 3.
Okay.
Did you need to set up a legal entity for White Suit Press?
No,
Okay.
it's not a legal entity.
Your IT person that manages your blog, are he or she also a writer and a participant?
Yes.
Okay, good. One-word answers.
Hey, I'm a business major.
Did you mention Kathleen Blanco by name in your books about the Crescent City?
Big Mama and the governor.
Okay.
There are 3 people in Crescent City who are not named. The president, the mayor, and the governor.
Okay,
That's it.
thanks.
Yeah. I thought about it and I said, people, here's the thing. When you're writing about historical events, names can sometimes get in the way. And when I originally wrote my draft, I actually used names. I had no problem. Everything was true, everything was backed up. Let me show you something. I'm really proud of this. I love showing this. How many fiction books have a bibliography and statistics? I back up everything. But when you use a modern name, and the reader's reading right along and they're enjoying the story and everything else, and they run into a name and it comes to a dead stop. Boom. Ruins the flow of the writing. This is what I've done. You can't fall in love with your stuff. You got to remember you're trying to tell a story to someone else. You have to put yourself into the reader's mind. So, I went, they're going to see Blanco and then all of a sudden politics get involved. They're going to run the Nagin and politics are going to get involved, or whatever. But when you take that away, and you use those titles, it goes away. It solves the problem. You don't get all tied up with people getting defensive because of their beliefs or people getting really angry or whatever. You just get away from all that and you're able to tell the story of what really happened, about the mistakes that were made and who made the biggest mistakes. And I'll tell you who made the biggest mistakes, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So that's why I didn't use those names. That's why I used simply the titles. Those stories. Yes?
Would a blog work for my dad's book, his memoirs?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not going to be another book
Right.
for the next 92 years.
No.
Okay.
Unless you can participate in someone else's blog. Here's the other thing that you can do. And this is another thing about self-promoting. You have your blog, and then you have other people's blogs. And everybody who has a blog has the same problem. Content. You gotta talk about something. And what's the easiest thing for them to talk about? An interview. So what I would suggest you do is to go and do some research through Google or whatever, and you find those blogs. You find them through Facebook. You start asking other people. You find them, and then you basically contact them and says, hey, here's a story we got. Here's, my father's written this story. This is that little 30-second elevator speech where you're promoting the book. You write that down, and they'll go, oh, great, I got something to do this month. And sometimes they want to do it by Skype. Most often, they'll send you some questions, or they'll ask you, hey, just write whatever you want, send it to me, and I'll post it in there. But that's another way of promoting yourself and promoting your work, is to get other people's blogs. And whether you set up you have your own blog or not, every one of y'all need to be doing that. Find people who have blogs that would be interested in talking about your stuff, because they're out there. Yes?
Another way to say a guest blog. Your guest
Right,
blog.
you're a guest on a blog,
Yes.
exactly. And they do it all the time, and a lot of times they love that because they'll get their biggest audiences when they stop talking about themselves and they're talking about somebody else. Yes, sir?
I didn't ask you.
Okay, I just saw that, no,
He
okay.
just showed up.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever thought of doing anything as far as movies are concerned with your books?
I'd love to. I think, I have a couple of my books I think would make fantastic movies. The trick is that we actually have one of the members of the group for 20 years who basically, that was her job in Hollywood, was to read books to see if they would make great scripts.
May I ask who that was?
No.
Oh,
Because she's retired.
okay.
And-
Well, that's who I'm thinking of, actually.
Yeah. And she just wrote an interesting story about that. And she says the number of good stuff that she saw that they wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole is ridiculous.
This wouldn't be her, would it?
No, it's a different person.
Okay.
Different person. But yeah,
She's retired
she's
from
also,
United Artists.
yeah, she's also interested. So it's tough. You almost have to find somebody who has got some type of enough stuff in Hollywood that they can ram something like that through. It's really hard to break into that. Now, what she was saying, because you and I heard the same talk, was that all could be changing now, thanks to things like Netflix and phones and little cameras like that, and all that stuff, where people's going to start making their own movies and start posting them and everything else. That could very well be, we could be on dawn of something we don't know, and then 10 years from now, we're just going, everybody's making their own movies. And they'll be better than any of that shoot 'em up robot nonsense that's coming out of Hollywood. I hope so, because I've got some stuff I think would make great movies, but Pemberley Mansion would be fantastic, but unfortunately, nobody's making the best there. So, yeah, I wish. I hope you do, because if you do, please come tell me. But, yeah. Yes?
Jack, do you ever do any kind of workshops on how to set up a joint blog?
Well, I wouldn't be all I can do is tell you our experience. How to set it up is just so much work.
We're just going through the steps of what you did, would be
Yeah.
interested.
Well, I mean, I'll be
Make it
glad
clear.
to give my notes and everything else. I mean, you should let me know. I do have Anybody who wants my contact information.
I
see
do have it,
my
yeah, I like that.
websites and everything else. Everybody needs to have bookmarks, the heck of book. By the way, don't get business cards, get bookmarks. Everybody wants bookmarks.
Yeah.
That's what they want, bookmarks. They don't cost any more money, and everybody on the planet makes them, so just go ahead and do that. Yeah, it's the hardest thing is actually building the blog. Everything else is kind of easy once you get the blog up. What I'm talking about is not actually creating a blog. It's how to make it work for
Right.
everybody, and how to make sure that you can keep it going. Because like any other blog, a group blog can fail and collapse.
right.
And I've been in a group blog that failed and collapsed. And it's because of the dirty little thing. Remember how people talked about the 3 things that was outside of polite conversation? Politics, religion, and sex. It will kill a joint blog if you let any of that stuff in there. I have 19 people in this blog. They don't know who I voted for in the last presidential election.
Okay.
I don't know who they voted for. And we don't talk about it. In fact, we don't even talk about it on our personal pages. Ever. I'm not going to lose a book sale because someone doesn't like my political beliefs. It's not that important. That's between me and the ballot box. Unfortunately, I get a lot of stuff in my Facebook that I don't like seeing, but I don't say anything.
Right.
Because I'm not going to tick someone off. And if you let politics and religion and sex get into your blog, you're going to lose it. You've got to stay on point. You have to get along with people that you can disagree with. You have to agree to disagree. You're a football team. And that's where you have to be. You're not a bunch of golfers or tennis players. You're a football team. You got to shut up and keep your eye on the ball, which is promoting the blog, promoting your books. Everybody make more money. That's the one little danger I didn't talk about, but yeah, because that's what blew up a blog. It blew it up, and it was ugly. It was dirty, and people still hate each other over that. Don't do it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I heard you mention the word muse a couple of times. Could you explain to us what is a muse and how do you get your muse to talk to you?
My muse won't shut up. That's my problem. I have a saying, my muse is a harsh mistress. I'm weird. I can control my dreams. That's how I write. I actually dream scenes like a movie. And like a director, if I don't like the way it's going, I stop, back it up, and start over again until it's the way I like it. Then I wake up the next morning and I put it down on paper. But I'm weird. But that's my muse. My muse is that thing that's inside of you that comes up with these ideas. This ridiculous idea of putting Pride and Prejudice on steroids by making Darcy a ex-Confederate officer and Elizabeth a farm girl from Ohio whose only brother died while fighting in the Union Army. And now they moved to the same town. And yet they still get together. That's what my muse did. My muse has got a bunch of stories in my head right now. I gotta tell her, calm down, let's focus on the books we're trying to get out for next year. But yeah, I've already figured out the basic plot for this huge book I'm gonna write about the Civil War. I've got part of the plot figured out for the book I'm gonna write about the battle against yellow fever. Oh, I'm gonna kill some people in that book. So this is what the muse does. You all got a muse, you just gotta listen to it. You gotta listen to it. Now, the writing has nothing to do with the muse. That's the work. Remember that little saying they say you gotta write every day? Yes. I don't care how it is, somehow or another, figure out how to put 500 words a day on a piece of paper, and you're gonna do fine.
So you actually write, or do you talk into a recorder?
I type on my computer.
Okay.
Other people do it different ways. One of the people I know, Maria, on her writing, see, I do outlines. I actually do an outline. And a lot of times in the writing process, I'll write the last chapter very early in the situation. I already know how the book's going to end. Because I hate books that just kind of peter out. I like a very structured book, and my readers know that. They know it's going to end, and I'm going to tie up all the loose threads. Other people do it very differently. I know one who, like a screenwriter, she has a bulletin board. She'll put plot points. They represent different chapters. But then when she starts writing, she gets a legal pad, sits in her chair, has 2 cats sitting on her, and she's writing in longhand. Then she takes it, walks over to her computer, and transcribes. I just put it in the computer to begin with, but everybody's different. Everybody has to do it their way. Yes, sir.
Have you ever heard of automatic writers?
There are people who have, I think you're talking about the voice, the text.
You know, like when I write, I just sit down at a table and start writing, and just the story comes to me.
You're typing it as you write.
I'll
Yeah.
be typing it as you write.
Right. That's Abigail. We're gonna keep talking about Abigail. Abigail will start with a basic plot, and she just lets that muse take over. And what will happen is in every book, you'll see this either original character or some minor character all of a sudden take over the story about halfway in there. And they're always the most interesting character by the end of the story. And it happens to her all the time. It's exactly how she writes.
What's the percentage of people that can write like that?
I have no idea. You have to look that up, but of the 3, I've just talked about 3 writers. Me, I'm very structured. I got a cast of characters in my book. I mean, right there, you can see right in the beginning, okay, who's in the book and what they're doing. I write this the very first thing. I already know who's going to do what. I'm very, very structured. Maria's a little bit in between. Abigail's not structured at all. And yet we're all writing the same stuff. Humbly, I think we're all very good writers. But it's whatever, there's no right way to do it.
You heard that, huh? All right.
The only way to do it is to write
You heard that, huh?
every day.
Right.
Every day. Got to. And that's nice about a blog, because even if you're not working on your book, you're writing something.
Have you ever heard of when people, I guess what it's called, writer's block or something?
Oh, yeah.
Something happens in their environment or their life, and they might not write for a few months.
And that's dangerous, because you fall out of the practice. And so that's why that whole thing of writing,
I haven't written in 2 months.
It doesn't matter, he only cranked out 6 books at one time.
yeah, and that's dangerous. That's why I talk about that 500. Even if you're not working on that book, you got to write something. Keep in it, keep the juices going, because all of a sudden it's going to click and you can get back to that major work. Yeah, that'll happen.
Right?
Okay? I couldn't have answered all the questions.
I got one for you. How do you feel about Anne Rice and her books? What do you think of Anne Rice?
I respect Anne Rice as a successful writer. She puts together a good story. The plots have a definite movement to it. She's true to her vision. I'm not particularly an Anne Rice fan, but everyone's like that. Not everyone's going to be a fan of my work. But I respect the work she puts in.
What about George Lucas? What do you think of his work?
Do you really want to know?
Really? Yeah.
Don't ask him.
I think he's a hack.
Be nice.
He's a hack?
He wrote the first movie, we based it on writing and the script and everything else, was great.
Yeah.
The follow-up movies from that were okay.
Yeah.
I thought the third movie was silly, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Then he decided to go to write the prequels, which
Yeah.
blew up the entire history he had written in the first 3 movies.
My
Just
God.
destroyed the entire history.
My God.
That's why it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that Tolkien works,
Yeah.
because Tolkien spent 20 years on the backstory.
Yeah.
20
I love J.R. Tolkien.
years on the backstory before he wrote the books.
The Lord of the Rings.
So it all made sense. And he would refer to history that you never saw.
Yeah.
But he did that because he already had the whole thing structured. Lucas didn't. Lucas was starting right from right. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's do a flip side of this conversation.
Okay?
You are a male fiction romance writer.
Yep.
What got you into that category, and do you know any other men? Because that's a
By
rare.
name of who are doing this full-time, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know who they are. In fact, as people say, Jack, you gotta get,
A lot of us
you gotta
don't.
be a member of the Romance Writers of America. They're gonna love you. You're the only guy there. Yeah, I don't know how I got into it. It's just that there's something about Austen
Still again.
that really
Yeah.
just got me. She was a great and honest observer of the human condition. You compare what Austen was writing with some of her contemporaries and some people who followed after her. Take Twain. Twain, great writer, fantastic stuff. He wrote a lot of truth, but he didn't write real people. He was writing caricatures.
Right.
He was writing caricatures because he was trying to get across a point. A lot of it was political. But he was trying to get across a point. Austen was maybe trying to get a point across, maybe not. But she was writing about real people. And for crying out loud, read Austen. She's hilarious, okay? That's the first thing. She's really, really a funny writer. But the thing about it is when you read Austen, you see the characters, and you're going, good Lord, I know people like that. I know people like Mr. Collins. I know people like Lady Catherine. I know people like Mr. Bennet. I know people like Elizabeth. I know people like this. And that's what makes her so darn interesting. And because I'm a history guy, she lived a really, really interesting period of time. And all the interesting periods of time, in my theory, happened at the end of one era and the beginning of another. You notice that all the great westerns you always liked, when were they set? After the Civil War. Why? Because the West was changing. It was dying. The cowboys running around there, huge ranches, all that stuff. And then what was coming in? The railroads, schools, churches. The West was changing. An era was ending. The end of one era and the beginning of another is always the most interesting parts of history. Austen lived during one of those. And so that's another thing that makes her fun to write with as a person who's interested in history. And that's why the points of time that I'm picking to write, particularly in the Louisiana series, are points of the Old South and the New South. The change of the turn of the century, where technology is going, but we're going to end the greatest threat to life in Louisiana, which is yellow fever. Yellow fever killed more people than anything in Louisiana history. I mean, you had yellow fever breakouts like we had hurricanes. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when the next one was going to happen. When we beat yellow fever as one of the great events in history, that's how big it was, and we take it for granted today. That's interesting to me, and that's why I picked it.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. This Barnes & Noble closes at 9, and I want everyone that wants to talk to this gentleman to have time, so we're going to go ahead and end the meeting and give people the freedom to talk with you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so he's all yours now, anybody?
I just want to say, I missed your brother.
I'm glad you liked it. And